If you love Bloodborne but hate Elden Ring, I've got a build for you. This hunter build comes straight out of Bloodborne and you can live out your dark fantasies in the lands between. What do you mean Bloodborne isn't on PC? I'm playing it all the time. Let's go through my Bloodborne themed build for you guys. This is a New Game Plus build, and I don't see a lot of value in doing New Game Plus builds, to be honest, but I wanted to do some more themed builds that aren't necessarily about like min-maxing, but more about the fun of the game. I almost put this in my Arcane builds video to try, but I wasn't happy with it at the time. If you'd like more of these like fully themed builds that aren't like particularly stat gods or one shot any boss, oh my god, you have to see this builds, then let me know in the comments down below. I've got some more themed ideas, kind of like the Wolverine video we did way back when. I've got an idea for Sekiro and a couple of other ones I'll keep to myself in case we do end up doing them, so let me know down below. Anyway, this build isn't about min-maxing or using the best weapons and setup. It's about playing the theme that we have set out to do, and so for that we are using the Pulley crossbow in our offhand and a scythe in our main hand as our two primary weapons. This gives you a ranged crossbow and a close range option in the scythe. I tinkered with the malicious sword, but the halberd has a slow basic attack animation, and for a build like this where we don't use a shield at all because there are no shields in Bloodborne, something a little quicker like the scythe fits a little bit better and gets that kind of combat flow working a bit more normally. It works out relatively well. I'm using the scythe with the Phantom slash Ass of War, and this triggers a phantom that slashes before zooming yourself forward to slash as well. You can also perform another attack after this with an additional input. I went with this Ash of War because it's fantastic at closing the distance after you've used the crossbow for a ranged attack, so you can get some crossbow bolts off and then pop this and close that distance to get nice up and close and deal really good damage to enemies with this attack and just with the scythe in general. The scythe does do blood loss buildup, and I've put the occult variant on it as well so that it does scale with my arcane much better than if you just put blood on it. The scythe is a solid weapon, and with the Phantom slash Ash of War on it, you can really get that blood loss off on targets and benefit from that effect and just using it and also looking like a complete badass. I'm also using the blurred bolts for my crossbow because these do blood loss buildup. Now you can purchase these from the imprisoned merchant near Mog's Palace, and if you do go down there, he has like an unlimited amount of these, so you can just spend all of your runes on it, but you could just use any normal bolts. You don't have to use these, but it just fits the kind of theme of this build. In my secondary weapon slots, I've got the Dragon Communal Seal, which scales with Arcane perfectly, and it does require like virtually no faith to use, so we can use some incantations in this build. And I'm also using the Mantis blade as well. Now the Mantis blade has a unique R2 on it that like extends the weapon out, kind of like how in Bloodborne you can like change your weapon forms, so it fits that theme. It's also really good for quicker enemies where the scythe is just too slow or you're in like a really close quarters. The Mantis blade is really valuable for those situations, so you can switch to that and get some quick attacks off, and being a curved weapon, it's got great animations to use for that. The R2 fits with the theme, and I've put the Blood Blade Ash of War onto this because of the benefit of that little bit of range damage you can do, and I put the blood variant on to add blood loss to the weapon as well. It doesn't scale as well, but it's more just for those quick enemies that I can hit with, and the scythe really acts as the main weapon here, and then the dragon seal that we're using is for the incantations. And for those spells, I'm primarily using the beast incantations because they have such a low faith cost. Like you can get most of these bestial incantations with just 15 faith. You only need 15 faith for flame grant me strength, which I'm using as well to increase my physical damage. You honestly don't have to do that if you don't want to, but just that little bit of extra damage in a build like this that isn't necessarily a stat pusher, and using the best kind of weapons, that just little bit extra definitely helps. I'm using bestial vitality for a little bit of HP regen, which fits with a little bit of that Bloodborne kind of theme that we're going for, and you can use the other bestial vitalities, you know, the pocket sand and the stone of Garak. I'm using them on the odd occasion where, say if you run out of bolts or you don't want to waste bolts on just the trash enemies, you can then use that. It just gives you more flexibility in general to do that, as well as just adding more stuff to this kit. So we've got a crossbow for ranged options, we've got the bestial incantations, you've got a slower, more heavy hitting weapon in the scythe, and then a faster, more quick hitting weapon with the Mantis blade. So tons of flexibility here, and all kind of fitting in this like hunter theme that we're going for. Well, there isn't really bestial incantations in Bloodborne, but we're kind of fitting in that theme, you know what I mean. Attribute wise, you can see my attributes here. It's essentially arcane, and then secondary is dex. I've got a little bit too much strength here because I was tinkering with different weapons, but you can really drop that out. Vigor, endurance, endurance and mine are obviously important, and 15 faith for spells. But realistically, as I've said, this isn't about min-maxing or finding, you know, those breakpoints, any of that nonsense. It's really just about making a fun build that you can play in New Game Plus, and a different way of completing Elden Ring, you know, setting yourself challenges for that kind of regard. In terms of our gear, we are using the Traveler's hat here, so it looks kind of like those Hunter's hats, and the Knight's Cavalry set is the rest of that gear, and the blood that's kind of on that set definitely gives you that Hunter vibe that you could honestly wear whatever armor you like. You could even wear better armor that suits situations better, but just fitting that style, that's why I've gone with this route. For talismans, I'm using the Lord of Blood's Exaltation to increase damage when blood loss is around. I tinkered with the old Swaddler's Cloth, so when you have successive hits, you get HP back, and that fits perfectly with that Bloodborne build, how you get health back from hitting enemies, but it just doesn't trigger enough. With the Scythe, you don't do enough of those like consecutive hits fast enough to get that to trigger as often. So I ended up switching that out for the Taker's Camino, which when you kill an enemy, you get HP back. So fits with that general kind of theme, except slightly differently, being on death rather than on hit. I'm using the Shard of Alexander to increase the damage of our Ash of Wars that we're using, so for things like Phantom Slash, and the Arrow Sting Talisman to increase the bolt damage for our crossbow, as that's part of the kit that we're using. You could switch this out for other things, but I feel like it fits better with this build. So generally, how to play this build and the kind of flow is you will start combat, especially boss encounters, with the Bestial Vitality, Flame Gantry Strength for the extra damage, as well as that HP regen. You'll enter the fight and use the Pulley Crossbow from range, most likely using your Blurred Bolts for that blood loss build up and trying to get that effect triggered on the enemies. If it does trigger, you get that extra attack power, and then you can close that distance with the Phantom Slash and deal damage from that and just like start slashing away. And in some cases, because of the stagger on Phantom Slash, you can just like keep spamming it and kill them and it works out fine. But in some situations, you know, enemies that are a bit faster or a bit more versatile in their kit, you won't be able to get that attack off very quickly or often because of the slightly slow wind up. But if you're creating that distance with the crossbow and then triggering the effect, you can usually work out that balance and get that flow nice. And the Mantis Blade is there as well if the Scythe is too slow, and you can use Blood Blade, which I use occasionally, but mostly I've stuck with using the Scythe in those situations. This build does take a little bit of time to get used to because it's weird playing this kind of build in Elden Ring, like using this really slow weapon with a crossbow and then potentially using incantations. There's a lot of things here that you can do, but once you get the flow going, it's definitely a lot of fun. And you can use those incantations when you're out of bolts or in just general situations where you want to throw pocket sand at people. There's always a good time to throw pocket sand at people. It's just such a good attack that is a good AoE in front of you, deals good damage. Any build that can fit this into it, I love using pocket sand. So a lot of fun to be had here, and plenty of other different weapons that you could use if you don't want to use these that kind of fit like that Bloodborne Hunter kind of theme. Let me know in the comments down below if you are making a build like this and different weapons that you've used. I'm interested to see what you guys think for these kind of style of builds. There's some really cool unique weapons in Elden Ring, even like the Mantis Blade that comes from, you know, one specific enemy in one of the hero graves. It's a super hard weapon to find, but it's actually pretty cool. Let me know what you think of these themed build, guys. I'm really interested to see, and we can definitely do more of these New Game Plus like specific themed builds. I'm kind of interested at the moment in completing Elden Ring in specific ways, like challenging myself to use like specific themes rather than just completing the game for the, I don't know, 10th time. You know what I mean? Like just different ways to play the game, and I think these kind of themed builds are a really good way to do that. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.